been a little while since we've done one of these. This is one of Sportskeeda Wrestling's pay-per-view previews. And today, I've had a few great guests in the past. I think the most recent one was back with Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful. And the guy that I've got with me today is someone that I actually got in touch with through Sean Ross Sapp, and now someone that, I've admired his work from afar. Now I get to talk away to him, anytime wrestling news breaks. He's one of the guys that I'll look and see what that news is on his page, because he's one of the go-to reporters. For a start, I feel like I might have mentioned a word there that I was trying to avoid. I hate calling the guy next to me, or above me or below me, depending on where you're watching. I hate calling him a wrestling journalist, because he's so much more. So we'll put wrestling in quotation marks. The go-to reporter I mentioned, the go-to, sadly, for everything recently COVID-related. The guy breaking the news on WWE's COVID situation, AEW's COVID situation. He's closer to those situations than most of us because he's in Florida. It is Spectrum Sports 360 reporter, host of Living The Gimmick podcast, Jon Alba. How's it going today, John?
I've been working in pro wrestling, in television for 5+ years. I've never had an introduction like that. So thank you, Gary.
No worries. And that is me. I've eaten up all our time, so we need to call it a day and go.
Okay. I appreciate you having me, man.
No, man. Thank you for coming on. So, yeah, I mentioned that you're right there in Florida. You're in what seems to be a hotbed for the stuff that's going on right now. But how is it going? How are you doing?
We're doing okay. We're finding ways to just kind of trudge on through everyday life. I actually had a chance to travel for business this past week. I called the Synergy Pro Wrestling show on Fight TV this past week, which was a lot of fun. It was nice to actually do something active, so that was a lot of fun, but just hoping everyone's staying safe and doing everything they can to ensure that we can all get out of this mess as soon as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. And of course, we're here to chat some Extreme Rules. Before we get into predictions, I'm going to ask you, are you excited for Extreme Rules?
Well, first off, Gary, as a journalist, it's my responsibility to correct you because it is the horror show at Extreme Rules. We care about accuracy. Listen, I look at this card and I say to myself, there are certainly stuff that has a pretty high ceiling to be very good. And I also look at this card, and as I've talked about on my podcast, Living the Gimmick, there are circumstances where it feels like WWE may be getting in its own way and prohibiting itself from succeeding in a way that most would say, okay, that was a pretty good show. I hope to be wrong on that, but I'm cautiously apprehensive about that.
Definitely, and I'm glad you corrected me on that, the horror show at Extreme Rules, because at the end of this, at the end of our predictions, we're going to decide what kind of horror show it's going to be. Is it going to be an amazing horror movie like, Scream, Halloween, or is it going to be a horror for everyone who watched it? We'll decide on that at the end. But yeah, let's just dive straight into it. There's a couple of matches I'm going to mention first because they've not been announced. I'm going to jump the gun and we'll pretend they've been announced for now, and I can look like the fool later if they don't get announced. Jeff Hardy, Sheamus, bar fight. It was alluded to on SmackDown. I guess we'll probably get the confirmation on this week's SmackDown. What are your thoughts heading into that match? What are your thoughts on the angle overall, but who do you think comes out the winner?
Well, we're in a situation right now where I think it's plausible we see 3 cinematic-esque matches on this card, which I've been saying this since day one with the Boneyard match. Really cool stuff, innovative, but if you oversaturate it and you do it too much, it's going to become off-putting for your audience. So maybe this is done. I'd personally rather see this be done if they're going to go forward with this in the style of what they used to do with like the APA stuff back in the day. Maybe bring a little bit of a realism into it rather than shoot it cinematically, but I envision it'll be more of like a Western cinematic kind of thing. I have not been a fan of this angle. Jeff Hardy already lost their match itself. Now they're going with the idea of, well, he can overcome 2 demons, his drinking demon and Sheamus, which is just a ridiculous concept in and of itself. But if they're going to go forward here, I don't see there being like a clear, decisive winner per se, but I would hope it ends with Jeff Hardy standing tall as the babyface and moving on and challenging for bigger and better things. Jeff Hardy is someone who can be used in a more important role than he's being used in right now. He can be used to elevate some younger talent. He can be used in a mid-card title picture, or he can be used as a credible challenger for Braun Strowman. Right now, both titles are on both brands are missing credible challengers, and Jeff Hardy with his pedigree is someone who can be in that position, so I hope he moves forward.
I'm glad we've started there, because I believe this might be the first time I've ever got off on the right foot with someone who has made a prediction I've completely agreed with. Yeah, 100%. I think Jeff Hardy, you mentioned it there, this, the storyline overall, a little bit questionable. The fact that Sheamus won the match, a little bit questionable, but I think Jeff Hardy has to win this one. And the other match that I believe we're heading towards, it's got to be a SmackDown Tag Team Championship match. A tables match, I believe it's going to be. Looks like we're heading that way between the New Day and Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro. Is that where you think we're going with that? And who do you think comes out the winner if so?
I'd say probably heading in that direction. I always struggle with New Day matches because every time you want to pick against them, they always win. So... And it's like at the same time, you don't have a problem with them winning because they're a great act. I was just listening to their most recent podcast episode on the plane the other day. They're relentlessly entertaining. I kind of like the tag team of Nakamura and Cesaro. I feel like those are two guys who should be doing more and could be positioned in higher ways. But I do like them. They're both extremely solid hands to have. I wouldn't hate a title run for these guys. And with tables matches, it allows you to give guys a chance to maybe win a match in a less conventional manner that doesn't hurt your babyface. So let's pick against the grain here. Let's go with Cesaro and Nakamura as your new champions and shake things up a little bit. You got to find ways to create new acts and create new stars. WWE needs that right now. So give a little credibility here.
And it means that if the New Day drop the title, they can add another title reign later to keep those numbers going. That seems to always be the way. So I think I would pick the New Day here, but at the same time, just because the storyline has been thrown together, I believe the Forgotten Sons were meant to be in that spot. Just because it's been thrown together so much, I wouldn't bet against them doing a title change because it's typical, typical of the way things go. But now we can get into the actual card. Oddly, there's only 6 matches announced so far. Obviously, those 2, if confirmed, will take it up to 8. But there's 6 matches so far. Man, you mentioned that cinematic matches will probably dominate this, but the first match that we're going to mention is not going to be cinematic, we don't think, and it is Apollo Crews versus MVP. Both of them, oddly, have a United States Championship right now, but who walks out the actual champion?
This match has actually been harder for me to confidently pick than I would have thought originally because there's obviously a lot of leverage right now with this Bobby Lashley MVP pairing. MVP is not someone who should be in the ring full time at this point, but if you were ever to leverage yourself into a position where you are trying to build a new act, and again, that's where WWE is right now. You need to be building new acts and building new, legitimate, credible characters. Well, they've kind of given this subtle little thing with Ricochet and with Cedric Alexander. And look, Lashley and MVP ran together in Impact as a team with Kenny King. Who's to say that they wouldn't be able to recruit one of Apollo Crews' friends onto their side to orchestrate a turn there and run as a stable for Apollo Crews to hopefully down the line overcome that. With that said, I think it would be damaging to Apollo Crews to lose the title here, and I'm going to go with him, but I can't say that I'd be all that surprised, truthfully, if we did see some sort of turn to give more credibility to the MVP stable.
I believe you've said that better than I ever could. I'm the same. I think they've got to stick with Apollo Crews here, but at the same time, MVP holding a United States Championship is a sight I think we're all pretty used to. So you never know. You never know.
But he also shouldn't be defending. Like it should be one of the things where he's the champion, but everyone else is doing his dirty work for him.
Yeah, definitely.
Build that heat. And listen, MVP, again, maybe not someone I need to see in the ring every week at this point in his career, but he's no doubt added a substantial voice to Monday Night Raw, and he's done excellent work with his microphone and enhancing other characters, and that's a positive.
Yeah, he's done wonders for Lashley. I think he's got Lashley back on track, which is what was, something I was calling for ages.
Sure.
And I've kind of, I've done this not in the order particularly that I think we're going to see stuff, but maybe we will, because there's so many cinematic matches. They've got to put one in early. Let's just go for Rey Mysterio, Seth Rollins, the eye for an eye match. It's all anyone is talking about. The thing that struck me, I was like, what is an eye for an eye match? Read on WWE.com that, the winner is determined by them gouging their opponent's eye out, which doesn't sound very PG. What can we expect from this match? What do you think we see, and who do you think we see winning? And I can tell you look excited.
Listen, in theory, I should be very excited for a Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio match, right? Like, you say the two of them at the top of the games could have one heck of a match. This is what I was referring to where I said WWE sometimes tends to get in its own way. You take something that could just be a great, straightforward pro wrestling match where you can get a babyface over, you can get a heel over, and you take it to that level of goofiness that is almost to a degree off-putting. Tough call here, honestly, and I'll explain why. Because one, you hear these reports of Rey Mysterio being on a date-to-date appearance basis right now, more or less. So that would tell you maybe there's a way of writing that off. But then they've also invested in Dominic this entire time, and you're like, well, what does that mean? If you were going to remove someone's eye, that seems like a pretty substantial commitment to a gimmick. So Rey Mysterio could, in theory, lose and wrestle with one half of his mask exposed, as he has been, and he could do that for the rest of his career if you really needed him to. Seth Rollins losing this would just be the most ridiculous, gimmicky scenario ever. He'd have to wrestle with an eye patch for the rest of his career. Until 3 months from now, where they're like, oh, he's good. He's got a glass eye. He's fine. The story lends itself to the babyface winning, but long-term longevity-wise, I just don't see how Seth Rollins would lose in a scenario like that.
Yeah, I've only got 3 possible scenarios here. I think Rey Mysterio has to lose. I think he's, we mentioned that the mask, of course, there's one way that you can gimmick him not having an eye. Seth Rollins has to wear an eye patch. The only ways I see this going is either it's an incredible advert for WWE's doctors and surgeons, and someone gets immediately shot to the local medical facility and their eye gets reattached.
But what is, I mean, that is just crapping all over your gimmick that you've set up.
Much like the AJ Styles return after the Boneyard match.
Right. And how many times have we seen situations like that in pro wrestling where there's this big stipulation, then you immediately go right back on it? That just doesn't seem very conducive to me. No,
all I can see happening is either that, Rey Mysterio, I put out a little photo of him wearing the Daredevil costume. Maybe he wrestles blind, maybe he loses 2 eyes, or maybe the Monday Night Messiah loses his eye and then they backtrack again and he has the powers from above to heal his own eyes. That would be terrible.
Not about that. Not about that. Not about that.
No, but yeah, the one thing I'll say, I'm very intrigued to see what happens. I'm the same as you. I wish we were just getting a straight match. Give me a ladder match or something between the two. Maybe just not reaching for an eye.
Have them wrestle a singles match.
Yeah,
how about that? It's Extreme Rules, and there's not a single Extreme Rules match on this card right now. So there you go.
A singles match, I think that's a crazy idea. No one will ever want to see a singles match, a singles wrestling match. But saying that, we do have 2 amazing ones that I've stuck these 2 together in the predictions. 2 of the matches I'm most excited for, both the SmackDown and Raw Women's Championship matches. Sasha Banks and Bayley both in action. So we've got Bayley versus Nikki Cross. We'll start with that one. How do you see it going?
I have talked about this on my podcast, Living the Gimmick, week in, week out, and I know you're very much in my camp on this. I think Sasha Banks and Bayley are the best things going in WWE right now. Straightforward. I think they are the best thing going forward in WWE right now. That's why they're being showcased on all these different brands here. And every time that I'm like, okay, it's time to do the split, time to turn, they convince me that no, it's not the time to do it now. And now you have to wait till fans are in attendance to do this and all that. So I've really enjoyed what they're doing. I will be completely honest with you. I don't have much interest in the Bayley-Nikki Cross match, even though both are great competitors and great at what they do. No part of me believes Nikki Cross can actually beat Bayley from the story that they've been told. And not in terms of what she's capable of doing in the ring, just the story that they're telling. No part of me makes me think that Bayley is going to lose to Nikki Cross, so therefore I have Bayley. I hope they get some time to work, though, and enhance what Nikki Cross is capable of as a single star.
Definitely, yeah, I agree there. I think it's a little bit too rushed in terms of being thrown together for Nikki Cross to actually come away with the title, unless they were to pull the trigger crazily and have Sasha Banks attack her, maybe if she lost to Asuka, but probably not. I think it's got to just be a Bayley win. But let's go on to that match that we mentioned, Sasha Banks versus Asuka. Again, is this as straightforward as it seems? Sasha Banks from SmackDown challenging for a Raw Women's Championship. We normally know how that goes, but how do you see it going?
This was the match that I was most looking forward to on this entire card, quite frankly. I think it's been the best build of any of the matches. And the sequence that these two had in the tag team match a couple weeks ago on Raw, where Sasha got one up on Asuka, I thought was just exceptional. So I am really looking forward to this match. This is where Sasha has to get cost a little bit from Bayley here. This is where Bayley doesn't want to share that glory of Sasha having the two belts. Yeah. And there has to be that little something that gives Asuka the opening to win this match here. I think they're going to tear the house down. I think Asuka wins this match and hopefully moves on to great things come SummerSlam with an opponent potentially like Shayna Baszler. So let's see what comes of that. But I'm really excited for this match.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking as well. I completely agree with what you said before. Sasha and Bayley, definitely the best thing about WWE right now. Asuka winning this, and then that kind of progressing both Sasha into the Bayley storyline. Asuka with Shayna Baszler would be perfect. So we've got 2 championship matches left, or we've actually not. We've got a championship match and a non-title match, featuring the Universal Champion. I think we've got to end on a cinematic match, so let's say the WWE Championship goes in next. I'm probably wrong, but let's say it anyway. Drew McIntyre versus Dolph Ziggler. Who'd have seen this coming a month ago? I don't think anyone would have seen this coming beforehand. But we've got a stipulation, TBC, or maybe TLC if you believe the Facebook advert. I don't think we can believe that. But they apparently leaked this as a tables, ladders and chairs match. I don't think it's going to be that. What do you think it's going to be? Have you got any strong opinions on what you think?
It's Extreme Rules, so I expect them to do. I do think they might do something like a TLC match or something akin to that, because there are no other matches on this card that are using weapons as of now. And I mean, we talked about the potential table match, but
neither there is.
but I think they'll do some sort of stipulation like that. I have no doubt they'll put on a good match. They have good chemistry together. They were a great tag team. Both are great workers. I think Dolph Ziggler's actually done pretty good work in this feud here. But again, no part of me believes that Dolph Ziggler will beat Drew McIntyre here. It's a filler feud for him, and bigger and better things probably with someone like Randy Orton coming up next. So I think that this is not a situation where I see a title changing hands and Drew McIntyre wins.
Yep, definitely. And that kind of leads me to believe that what we mentioned earlier with the tag team championships, maybe they change hands because nothing else seems likely. It seems like, every other match is a foregone conclusion. I completely agree. I thought this had to be Extreme Rules as the match, stipulation. The one thing I don't want it to be is like a no Claymores match. That's the thing that's been bandied about. Hopefully is not the case.
But what kind of payoff is that where after this whole build of of you've never been in a stipulation like this. You'll never know what's coming. It's an Extreme Rules match. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Who saw that one coming? So I hope that's not the route they go. But
I really hope not, but I'll wait and see.
But I also don't want to see a stipulation that limits how good they are. So
yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, because it could be an amazing match. And then the match that could main event, maybe, even though it's not for the title, Universal Champion Braun Strowman against Bray Wyatt. So we've saw this match before. We saw them competing at Money in the Bank in front of no one. It seems like they're going to be in front of no one again in the Swamp. What do you think a swamp fight entails or a swamp match entails, and who comes out the winner?
I don't know if it's one of those things where there's a winner again. It could very well just be someone just ends up standing tall at the end here. It's more character building. I'll say this. I actually agree with you. I do think this is going to end the show. If the indications are correct that this is kind of the genesis of the Bray Wyatt character, and Bray himself has had a big part in putting this kind of thing together, this could be pretty good and pretty entertaining. I'm not a big fan of Braun Strowman as Universal Champion. I don't think there's been a lot of compelling stuff with him as champion, but Bray is one of the more compelling characters, and I love the fluidity of Bray Wyatt right now, being able to go in and out of the different characters, kind of like what Matt Hardy does, and not being so restricted to the Fiend over-the-top stuff like that, and him being able to go through these different iterations. There's a story to be told. I don't really know what my expectations are for this. I just hope that the creativity of Bray Wyatt is put at the forefront, and I couldn't really tell you how this show ends, to be completely honest with you, because I don't know what to expect with this thing, which I guess is a good thing.
Yeah. The unexpected is always the thing that I guess draws us into watch. But for me, I think it's got to be a Bray Wyatt win, maybe, but maybe the same as what you're saying. I don't think it's a 1, 2, 3 referee count in any way. Maybe it's just Bray standing tall, or maybe it's Braun standing tall and then the Fiend turns up. Who knows? I think this is one of the matches that is the one I know least about. I've no idea what a swamp match is going to be, but maybe that's the thing that makes it exciting. I think I know the answer to the next question. I've got 2 short questions for us to end on. Match of the night?
I think it's going to be Sasha Banks and Asuka.
Completely agree there. That was the easiest question ever. And the final question, the horror show Extreme Rules. Is it going to be like your favourite slasher movie ever, or is it going to be horrific to watch?
It's a card that there is intrigue on some matches. And again, I'm really interested in the women's matches. I'm excited to see them. The eyeball, man. It's like, I talk about it for any 90s kids out there. It's like Crumb from Our Real Monsters just holding the eye over his head. That's all I keep thinking about. I'm intrigued to see how they're going to do it, I guess, but
yeah, I'm exactly the same. So 50-50. I have no idea what to expect.
Again, I'm a real proponent of accentuating your positives and hiding your weaknesses, not getting in the way of yourself.
Definitely.
And this just kind of feels like that.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining me. We're going to leave it there because I know that John is a very busy man. So thank you so much, John, for taking time out of your day to chat with us. I know you're going to be out doing absolutely everything in terms of finding out all the latest news. If anyone wants to go check that out and be first to it, Jon Alba, JONALBA on Twitter. I'm sure there will be an on-screen graphic saying that anyway, so I don't actually need to say it. But go and check out what John's doing because, man, he is doing amazing work. There's a reason he's one of the most respected journalists in the field. Thanks, John, and hopefully we'll be happy after Extreme Rules and not regretting watching it.
Appreciate the kind words and appreciate you having me. You guys do great work as well, so thank you very much.
Thank you, man.